Hello, this is Akshay. Today I am going to show you how to do unit testing in Angular. Instead of just showing you the unit testing, I'll be building this widget and I will let the test drive my development. So we'll be using TDD, test driven development, for this. Component is very simple. You'll have a search bar and you have a list of items here. When you search here, you can filter everything from here. When you click on fetch, it will do a service call, and hence we can replace the item here. And when you click on select all, it will select all the checkboxes. So first we'll just create everything. Okay, so let's start with creating a project. I'm using Angular version 10 for this. Okay, so let's create one project. I don't want to use routing. Okay, so Angular has by default created a framework for unit testing, so we will utilize the same. So for unit testing, there are two libraries we can use. So one is Jasmine and one is Karma. So Karma is a test runner and Jasmine is actual test executioner. Okay, so this is the framework where we can write the test cases, and this is the runner. We can specify our test case using .spec file. So by default Angular creates one for us. Okay, so the way we'll do this is, in TDD we first need to write a failing test case for any requirement and then write the code to fulfill that requirement. So this is called red green method. So first you write failing test case and then you make it green. Okay, so we'll start with creating this widget and writing a test case. Okay, for easiness I'll use Angular CLI to create a widget. So I'll generate one module and I'll name it as shared because some other modules can use this widget too. Okay, so it has created one module. Now I'll create a component and I'll create it inside shared and I'll name it as I don't know, I'll name it as selector. Okay, so it has created CSS, HTML, test case file and the component file, and also it added the declaration inside shared module. Okay, so let's go to shared selector and this is the test case file. Now we can execute the test case using npm test command. Under the hood it actually executes ng test, so you can utilize the same command, but we'll use npm. Okay, so way this works is, we have describe, we have before each, and we have it. These things are provided by Jasmine. So describe is a test suite, and it is the actual test case. So describe is kind of a group and it is a test case. Now the test bed is provided by Angular, which gives us way to create component and inject view and everything. So dependency injection or view integration, everything is handled by Angular itself here. Okay, so let's start with creating the test cases. So Angular has by default created a test case for us, that when I this test case says that my component should be available. So to be true means it is not undefined, it is defined. So if I create a component, it should be defined, and this test case is run by Karma and it is here. Okay, so Karma will open one browser and it will execute the test. Okay, so let's start with creating our components, actual test cases. Okay, so we'll go by one. So first we will create this search input. Okay, so I'll describe, so we can have describe multiple times. Okay, so group inside another group, so I'll say search bar, and inside that I am expecting that it should have a search bar. Okay, and my expectation is uh, search bar to be truthy. Okay, basically I should have search bar. Now in order to get the search bar, I'll use the Angular. So constant search bar is equal to, the way I can get this is I can use the fixture. So fixture dot native element dot it does not have that query selector. So what I'll do is I'll take native element out and give it a type. So let, and I'm saying that it will be an HTML element. So the native element property inside fixture gives us access to the DOM element of this component, basically this HTML hole. Okay, so and before each I'm saying that my native element is fixture dot native element, so I can use native element in all my test cases now. So native element dot query selector, this simple JavaScript, nothing related to TypeScript or Angular, this is simple query selector of JavaScript. So I'm saying that I will have input with the class search bar. Okay, so I'm expecting that I will have a search bar, but my test case failed because I don't have a search bar. So the first step, always write the failing test case. Okay, that's how you actually test your test case. Okay, so now I'll create a div with class selector main, and inside that div I'll create another div with class header, and inside that div I'll create input with the type text. I don't want to give any name or ID as of now. I'll give class that it is a search bar. I'm saying that. Okay, the test case passed, red to green. That's how you do coding in TDD, test driven development. Okay, now first we'll only do this aesthetics. So I'm saying that I'll have fetch and select all buttons. Now I'll create a new group for fetch button, so I'll say describe fetch button, and inside that I'll create a test case that it should have a fetch button, and I say fetch button is equal to native element dot query selector. I need a button with the class fetch button, and I'm expecting that my fetch button to be truthy. Okay, okay, my test case failed, and now I'll add a button to pass that. So here I'll create a button with class fetch button, and I'll give type as button. Okay, test case passed. Okay, now we'll add a select all button. Again, describe that this for select all button, it should have a select all button. Okay, and my select all button is okay. Now I have a failing test case for select all button, and I'll add a select all button here. So I'll add a button with the class select all. I add a type as button. Okay, so this part is done. Now we'll start with the items. So side items should have items if provided, and I'm expecting that item list is equal to so for selecting single element you use query selector, for selecting multiple element you use query selector all. Okay, so I'm expecting that I'll have multiple LIs with the class item. Okay, and I think that I'll input as I'll have 2 items in my input, and my structure would be it will have a title with type string, and there will be some array of that. I'm saying if I have this as my input, then I'll have 2 items. So my item list dot length to be 2. Okay, of course we don't have this, so in order to give this we need to add this property inside our component. So the way we can get handle of our component is using component fixture dot component instance. Okay, so we do component dot items is equal to item input, but of course we don't have this. So what we can do is we can declare property items inside our component. Okay, so we declared our property as item here, and I'll give it input. Okay, of course our test case is failing because we don't have anything to any code in our HTML. So the way we need to go here is after you change any input or output or anything here, you need to say fixture dot detect changes. After you do that, Angular's change detection cycle will kick off, and it will do all the changes in HTML. Okay, so of course this does not work because we don't have any code. So we'll go inside HTML, we'll create our one div with class body, we'll create one UL with class list group, the standard bootstrap group class. Inside that we'll create li with the class list group item, and another class as item, because that's our own class. okay, and this will use as ng4. And here we'll print the title of item. Okay, our test case passed. So now we have items. Okay, what is next? We need to have checkboxes. So I can utilize the same test case. So I'm saying that checkbox list inside input, inside item, I need to have input with the type checkbox. I'm expecting that checkbox list is 2. Okay, my test case failed. Now I'll add input. Okay, this is sufficient as of now. Okay, now what? Okay, I think the UI is done. Now let's add functionality inside this. So again we'll start from top. So next functionality is, if I start searching here, it should filter the list. Okay, so I'll add that test case inside my search bar. So my test case is if should filter from search bar. Okay, and I'll use the search bar from here, I'm saying, and I'll use the input from here. Okay, so I'm saying that we have set the items type in search bar. So the way you can type is, it is simple. So search bar is in HTML input element, right? So you say search bar dot value is equal to F. Simple. But this is not sufficient for Angular to detect that change, because we manually set this value. So we say that search bar dot dispatch event, and the will dispatch new event of key press. Okay, so we are saying that if I dispatch this event, my item list should have only one element. Okay, so if I dispatch this event, this item list should have only one element. So I'm copying that, and item list should be 1. Okay, it failed because we don't have any search mechanism here. Okay, so I think instead of doing any logic here, we should externalize this, and probably we should create one pipe for this, so that the logical things will be out of the component. Inside component we should always have the UI related things. Okay, so I'll stop this and I'll create one pipe. So ng generate pipe, and the name of pipe is I'll name it starts with, and I'll create it inside shared. So it has created pipe, it has created test case file, and it is already added into the module as well. Okay, so start with pipe. This is the specs. I'll start the testing again. Okay, so our failing test case is again failing because we don't have any implementation to that, but I think we can postpone that as of now. So what I'll do is I'll mark it as XIT. So whenever you mark it as X, it will understand that it is pending, so it won't mark it as failed test case. So 9 successful test case, and it excluded this. Okay, if you go into this karma, you can see this the yellow, it is temporarily disabled with XIT. So I'll first create the pipe, and then I'll check the then I'll integrate it in our component. Okay, so this is our pipe. So I'll start the test case here. So see this, it is simple pipe, I mean it is simple TypeScript class, and it does not include any Angular related stuff. Okay, because it is a standalone class. Angular or without Angular, we can consider this simple TypeScript class, and we can perform the operations. So no Angular needed here. So this is a pure unit test without having anything as a dependency. Okay, so now I'll start with the test cases. So it should filter if I give query. Okay, so instead of creating pipe here, I'll create a pipe outside of this. I'm expecting that if I give pipe dot transform, and I'll create some input as a global. So and if I give input, and as a query if I give foo, then I'm expecting that result to be equal to the first element of input. So the way we can get that expectation is okay, and this expectation should be array. Okay, because this result is an array. Of course it is failing because I don't have any code for this. So I'll say my value is having a title property and of string, and this array of inputs, and second argument is just query of type string. My output is the same thing, and I'm returning that value dot filter okay, my test case passed. Now I'll start another test case. So this was the exact match, but now I think we should go with the partial match. So should filter if I give partial query. Okay, so instead of foo I'll give just fo. Even in that case I should have the same expectation. Okay, so it failed. So failed because we don't have anything to match here. So instead of triple equal to, I'll say starts with query. Okay, passed. Now next thing, I think it should be case insensitive too, right? So if I give case insensitive query, so instead of fo, if I give small fo, even then it should pass. I'll use other type of syntax here. So instead of this I'll say, okay, so this extracts the first element from this array. Of course this does not pass because we don't have development for that, logic for that. So the way I can do that is, we can say the lower case query is equal to query dot to lowercase, and okay, now I need to compare this. So return that lowercase title compares with lowercase query. Okay, this should do the trick. Okay, it is successful. What next? I think it can be the case where my title have multiple words in it. Okay, so I say my title has happy birthday, and I'm searching with should search in multiple words. So the result I'm expecting is, okay, so this is the result. If I search with birthday, the result I'm expecting is third element, because it is the third element, and write the expectation. By the way, we didn't use to be here because to be checks for equality, and to equal actually search for every value. To be search for the object equality. Okay, and this should be array. Okay, now I think we need to split this. So each word is split of this, and we need to match that dot filter, then this is words. For each word we are saying that to start with this. So this will give us list of all the words that matched. So we'll say that if word match dot length is greater than 0, then there is some match. Basically any of the word have any match. Okay, it passed. Now I think there is some room for improvement. We have some repetitive title string here, so I think we can add it in another class. So what I'll do is I'll create another class as item.ts. I'll create a class that it is item, and inside that I'll add a property. Okay, and of course I need to export that, and I'll use that item. I'll import that. Okay, I'll replace that from everywhere. What next? This is again item. So there is a crucial step in TDD, because as you write the test cases and do the development to pass that test case, you don't care about the design upfront. You care about the design only when you think only when you get a chance to refactor. So if all the test cases are passing, you can do a refactor cycle and see that there are no breaking changes. Okay, so I'll see if, yeah, so this is the place I can replace, and in the test case, yeah, this is 2. So here without any fear of breaking anything, I can do the refactor. Okay, so after refactoring, everything is working. Yeah, so this is working. So what next? So we should say, yeah, so query can be multiple words too, right? Not just the item. So we are saying that it should search with multiple words query. So if my input is ABC, which does not match to anything, and BI and happy or just hap, still I should see the same result, and of course this should fail. And now add the logic for that. So this query will have multiple words, so I think this whole thing should be extracted to another function. So I'll refactor and extract filter with word. Great. So for each word, I'll do the same thing. So items for each word is equal to query words dot map the same thing. And instead of lowercase query, I'll have query word. Okay, and I'll return item for each word. Alright, so it will return array of array, because this returns array and this is array itself, right? So the map function will return array of array. So instead of map, I think we need to use flat map. Okay. Oh, it fails because it should have. I think I know the solution for that. There is the TypeScript configuration. So I need to go to the base.json, and inside library I need to use the latest ES 2019, and then I need to restart the ID. So I'll stop this, I'll restart the ID here. Okay, and I'll start the testing again. Okay, everything passed. So our last test thing passed. Okay, what next? Anything pending? I think there is one thing pending. We should escape the blank space. So saying that should escape the space. If my input is space 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 ABC, even in that case I should have the same result. If there is some other title with multiple spaces. Okay, we have our failing test case because it matched everything. So it matched the space too, right? So we need to say that from the split we need to filter that each word should be a word. That should be enough, right? So if it is a blank space, this will be false. Okay, so I think I need to add some comment here. We are filtering from array, and I think we need to have the same thing here too. Okay, our test case passed. Okay, now what? I think that's enough, right? I think we need to have another test case where if I give input as happy birthday, then I should have only one output, not two, right? So I should filter only one time. So what will happen is it will match the happy and it will also match the birthday, so it will fail. So the length was 2, but I was expecting only 1. Okay, and yes, I have a failing test case here too. So these are all the test cases. The star is pending and the cross is failing. So you can go to spec list and see the failing test case. So what to do here? So I think here I'll say that I'll return a set because it will ignore the duplicate values. So this, hope everybody knows what is this. This is a spread operator, a new syntax in Angular. Yeah, this is working. Now what? I think that's all for the pipe. Now it's time to add the pipe in our application, in our component. Okay, so I'll search for XIT and I'll remove that, and I'll see a failing test case. Okay, now what I'm saying here is, if I give input as foo and bar, and if I dispatch the F into search bar, and here I need to detect the change. After detecting the change, I should have 1 in my item. Okay, so I have a failing test case. Now I'll start adding that. So inside HTML I will add a pipe here. What was the name of my pipe? Starts with, so I'd say this starts with, and the input is query. Oh, I don't have a query here, right? So for each key press, I'll say on search change, I'll pass event here. And I'll get the target element. I'll say it is HTML input element, and query is, so I'll add a query here, which would be a string, and I'll say this dot query is search bar dot value. Okay, let me save everything. I think it broke everything. Let me see what could be the issue. Oh, the pipe start with could not be found. You can see here it in the karma error 2. Start with could not be found. The reason behind that is, this is a unit test, so we need to declare everything manually. So inside declaration, this is a module configuration, right? So this module configuration won't work here, so we need to declare this part starts with pipe here. Okay, still 6 failed. 2 lowercase of undefined inside our pipe. Oh, I think I missed one important scenario. So the scenario I missed is this could be blank too, right? So I need to say it should ignore blank query. So my expectation is the pipe dot transform with input, if I don't pass any query, it should be the same as input. Okay, so of course this failed. Let pass blank here, also pass null here, and also pass undefined here. Okay, so we have failing test cases. Now go and say if I don't have query, return value. Okay, only one test case failed. Okay, that's the component test case. So only one test case which we recently wrote failed. So we can again inspect that and see. Oh, I made a mistake here. The key press should be in this input. Okay, all test case passed. Now we can go ahead and do the other thing, fetch. Before we actually go ahead, I want to tell you this. So this we can consider as unit test, pure unit test, but this we can consider this as integration test, because we have integrated the component class with HTML and the filter as well. So this can be considered as integration test, not pure unit test case, but whatever helps us, we can go ahead. Okay, so now let's go with the fetch button. So I am here expecting that it should fetch from API and show in list. Okay, so what I'm expecting is where is my fetch button? There's my fetch button. So if I do so what I'm expecting here is, if I am doing a click on fetch button, I need to say it is HTML button element, and I detect the change, my li should be my li should be 3. So initially I'll give 2 li's. Okay, so initially I'll give this as a setup. So this is my setup. This is my action. So basically we are writing test cases in BDD style. So this is given when then, and of course this is not a constant because we are defining it multiple times. Okay, this is our setup. So this of course fails because we don't have a fetch button click action. Okay, so we are saying that when I do a fetch button click, I need to call a service, and then the service should return something and then it should set. Okay, so I'll close this and I'll create another service. So okay, created one API call.ts service, and here in the constructor I'll add in HTTP okay, I need to import that module. Okay, and I'll create another service. Now I'm not using the TDD here because I think the service requires its own video for TDD. So for the moment I'm skipping the TDD for service, and I'm not and I'm assuming that our service is not yet developed. We are just focusing on the component as of now. So I'm doing expecting that I'll have fetch item, and this will return observable of item, and this return I know this is not an proper TDD way, but for now I'll skip the service, and I'll show you how to inject the service inside our HTML component. Okay, so I'll again start the test. Okay, my test case failed because I don't have that injector here. So in the API call service, I'll say that I'll have import as HTTP client module. Okay, and my another test case failed, which was this fetch button and should fetch from API. Okay, so our fetch button test case failed. So what I need to do here is I need to inject the service. So we obviously cannot call this service, so we need to mock that. And how do I mock that? So given we use spy on, so this is a Jasmine functionality, and we need to spy on API call service. But in order to do that, we need to actually have API call service. So we say that API call is type of API call service, and we are adding it in providers, and we are saying that my API call is testbed dot inject of type API call service. So this will do the Angular trick to inject the API call. And okay, so we need to create a mock. Instead of creating the mock of whole service, we will create a spy. So we'll use one functionality given by Jasmine, which is spy on. So we'll say on API call for fetch item function when this happens, and return a value. So we'll return this value when this will be called. Okay, and we'll returning the observable of 3 items, right? Because we are expecting here 3. So first item will be title, who, bar, and another. Our test case failed because we haven't have any injection here. Okay, now we need to have a call for that. So I'll say private API call, and when I click on fetch, I need to call that service and subscribe that when this returns anything, so when this return data, we need to say this dot items is equal to data. Still 7 test case failed because we didn't have the HTTP module here, so we need to import the module, right? Because this have its own import. Okay, this passed. So we had few errors in here, so I think it's best to remove this item and check if it fails. Yeah, it fails, and when I add again, it passes. Okay, key takeaway from this test case, whenever we use the service, we need to add into provider, then we need to manually inject that, and we need to have a spy in order to check that. Okay, this will work now, but it is not a good thing to test using only this thing, because the actual service call won't return very fast. Okay, so we need to actually test the delay as well. So what we can do is we can add a delay here. So inside pipe, I'll say delay of, I don't know, 500 milliseconds, 5 seconds. In the delay function, we need to import from rxjs. Operators and delay. There are no solutions here. Okay, it failed because it waited for 5 seconds, and of course this is a linear, right? So detect changes does not work on asynchronous operations. So in order to check the asynchronous operation, we need to use another utility called fake async. So the blue curly braces, starting from this parenthesis, we need to wrap it into another function, and we need to wrap it into a fake async. Okay, so we are faking asynchronous here, and after click we need to say that tick. Okay, now tick accept some argument too, so we can say that wait for 500 milliseconds, because we know that there is the kind of delay, but it won't be required in actual application because we won't having delay there. So this tick will wait for all the asynchronous operations to be finished. Okay, yeah, so it passed. So there are multiple ways you can do the fake asynchronous, using fake asynchronous or using done function. Okay, but there is a good way, because this will actually do the faking. So see here, the time it took was 0.3 seconds, so it actually did not delay this, it just faked the implementation. Okay, so there is that. Now let's move next, the select all. Okay, so when I click on select all checkboxes should be selected. So I'll write a test case for that. Should select or should check all the checkboxes if I click on select all button. So I'll get the select all button. I'll say this is HTML button element, and I'll say select all button dot click. Then of course I first need to have the items here, so I'll have 2 items, so I'll add that. Then I'm expecting that I don't have any checkbox selected, so I'm expecting that checkbox selected checkbox is equal to native element dot query selector all, then li dot item, inside that input, then type is equal to checkbox, and it should be checked. So I'll expect that selected checkboxes length to be 0. Okay, and after I click, I'll again do the same thing, and I'll say that to be 2. So before, no checkbox should be selected, and after, 2 checkbox should be selected. So it failed because 0, we are expecting 0 to be true. Okay, so we are expecting 0 to be true. So notice this expectation is working correctly. Okay, so now we need to have that implementation. So when I click on select all, everything should be selected. So first thing I'll do is I'll add a output here. I'll add a function here which returns void, and I'll say I need to have some way to check here, right? So what I'll do is I'll bind with ng model, and I'll say for all the items item dot is selected is true. Of course we don't have is selected inside our item, so we will add that. So we'll say that is selected is optional, but default value is false. Okay, so this will do the trick, and we'll say that is selected is true, and we need to have some implementation of is selected here. So we'll say ng model is equal to item dot is selected. Of course this will fail because we need to import the ng model, so can't bind to ng model because it's not a known property. The reason behind that is we need to import that module inside our import array. So we need to import forms module from Angular. We need to import from Angular forms module. It still didn't work. Let's see why. So it is expecting still 0 to be true too, so it is still expecting that this should be 2, but it is 0. I think I missed a detect change here. Still an issue, it still failed. Everything looks good. Let's see how the value is there in the component. So I'll do a console log here. Let's use the console table here, this dot items, and we can check that from here too. So here the console, I'll refresh and I can see both of the items is selected as true. This should be working, right? The reason it didn't work is because the ng model is not actually synchronous task, it is asynchronous. So what you need to do here is we need to wrap this with fake async and do the tick here so that it can detect the change. But there is another thing we can do here too. Okay, so what we can do is instead of using fake asynchronous, we can use the fixture dot when stable. So it will again wait for the asynchronous task to be completed and then it will execute this function. So inside this function we can actually do the expectation. Okay, passed. All the test cases are passing, so you can see that here too, and all the scenarios are covered.